All right, welcome everybody. I feel like a debate is brewing in here already. The only 4 letters I've had to say today are USGA, and they've already started before we got on camera. So nothing fancy to say this week. It's just episode number 31 of No Putts Given. Let's get it.
No Putts Given is powered by MyGolfSpy, the most extensive reviews in golf. Before you buy, MyGolfSpy. 9 million readers do it every year. Check us out.
Fellas, here we are. To my left, Harry Nodwell, the director of the facility at MyGolfSpy. And of course, joining us remotely, there's editor Tony Covey and Chris Nickel, the director of business development. And over here to my right, owner and founder of MyGolfSpy, Adam Beach. And guys, I've read this whole thing. Distance Insight projects put out by the USGA. So before we really dig into it, should I read the summary of their conclusion just to give everybody a little idea of what we're dealing with here?
Hey, Dustin Johnson, listen up.
Their summary is, we believe that golf will thrive best over the next decades and beyond if this continuing cycle of ever-increasing distances and golf course lengths is brought to an end. Longer distances, longer courses, playing from longer tees, and longer times to play are taking golf in the wrong direction and are not necessary to make golf challenging, enjoyable, or sustainable in the future. In reaching this conclusion, our focus is forward-looking with the goal of building on the strengths of the game today while taking steps to alter the direction and impacts of hitting distances in the best interests of its long-term future. Guys, let's go around maybe in one sentence, initial reactions to the report put out. Adam?
I think it's good and bad. I think they did some good work in this for sure. But I think the solution to most problems is a lot simpler than a 102-page report that they
102,
put out.
I read 16, but I guess there's more to it. This is just the conclusion.
And after 2 years, they still don't have an answer. So I think we have that answer for everybody today, though.
Okay. Chris, how about you? First thoughts, initial thoughts.
Yeah, my first thought is typical. I think it's about what a lot of us expected in that it doesn't contain any real definitive answers. It gives us a little bit of direction as to their thinking and maybe methodology of what they're going to be considering moving forward. But, it didn't answer anything. It kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit. But that's more or less what I expected.
Okay, Tony, how about you?
Meh.
I think that's fair. All right, Harry.
It's just words, just a lot of words. And
wait a second, you wrote a great article today on it, and
I had fun with the charts, right? I mean, I think there's some interesting stuff in there, but if you're looking at sort of what is the big picture takeaway from all of this, it's like meh. It's a 2-year study that determined that more study is needed. So, where are we? We're kind of right back where we were with just a bit more info.
Okay. Harry, how about you?
I think you need to go back to do something better for the game instead of trying to make up this shit.
Well, Harry is our Dustin Johnson, so...
You are welcome. I am for the Dustin Johnsons of the world.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else out there heard that, but that was one of the best lines this week on social media about the USGA report. You heard Phil, everybody have their opinion. They said, Dustin, what do you think about the report? He said, man, I got that in my email. It was way too long, man. I ain't reading that. But Miranda did read it all for everybody. And,
essentially what the USGA is saying is they've discovered a threefold problem that they're essentially just announcing that they've discovered a problem. They're saying that equipment innovation, player improvements, and course conditions are leading to an increased distance and essentially taking away some of the competitiveness from golf is what I'm reading.
I think they did some really cool stuff. Like the stuff that Tony pulled out, the charts in the article today on MyGolfSpy for this, I think were super telling, valuable to all kinds of people. That being said, I feel like if we put out data like that, we would get shredded. And what I mean by that is it was not normalized, meaning weather was not the same from this year to that year. The venues weren't the same. That would be, you have to have some protocols for this stuff. And granted, that might be tough to do, but there are so many things that influence those little ups and downs on a chart, right? And when the average golfer reads those charts and goes, oh man, I see this trend going up. Well, yes, for the pros, no for the amateurs. The amateurs has basically been stagnant for, 20, 30 years now, it looks like. And then for the pros, where it's going up, what people don't consider is there's 4 or 5 things that could have influenced those tick ups that could have been the majority of why that thing was ticking up, and it has nothing to do with the ball or any of those things. Granted, yes, golfers are getting stronger. Yes, they are becoming more optimized with their equipment. But, I think there's a lot of things that are influencing those tick ups that golfers have no idea about. What's that?
Evolution.
Well, yes.
People who are getting better, they're more knowledgeable, stronger. It's just...
Golfers used to look like John Daly back in the day. They smoked cigarettes, they drank liquor, they're becoming athletes now, right?
Well, right, yeah. I mean, it's for instance, when I used to go play football in England, my dad used to tell me he used to have a pint of beer at half-time and a slice of orange. Like, now they're having electrolytes, they're having...
Beer's not electrolytes?
What?
Beer's not electrolytes?
If anything, it tastes good, but it's not electrolytes. But it's evolved. Like, people are getting massages at half-time.
Wow.
And, well, actually, you call it rub-downs, don't you?
No.
I call it rub-down in England. Yeah, it's a rub-down.
Anyway,
I think we're getting a little off course, but I think something to maybe think about, that this problem might be broader than golf. And I'll use another sport, for example. I think baseball is a good thing to look into. Baseball, you use a wooden bat and a bunch of thread bound together by leather. Pitchers are constantly pitching that ball faster. Nothing's changing equipment-wise. Hitters are constantly hitting longer home runs because we're starting to understand the biomechanics behind the way that we can use our bodies to improve in our sports.
Like golf, that's part of the story, right?
Right.
Baseballs were made differently for a while, and balls are...
But I guess what I'm saying is the equipment hasn't improved that much, and we're still seeing this increased distance problem,
in every sport,
if you will.
No different than my 9-year-old daughter, right? Kids are playing the same sport more. They're getting better at a younger age. My wife's a college coach, and when I first met her, the kids that played in college, my 9-year-old daughter is as good as from a stick skill component level, as good as the college players were 15 years ago.
Right.
And that's happened in just 15 years.
Because players are specializing.
They're specializing more. They're practicing more. They're having better coaching from better coaches.
And I think as an athletic community, they have a better understanding of how to be better at golf, baseball, football, basketball, whatever it may be.
Yeah, but Tony, let's get to some specifics, right? Get to the why this report was even done, right?
Yeah, I think the short answer, right, at least the answer being given, is that the USGA and R&A are worried about the future of the game, right? Like, what does the game look like? What does golf look like if guys continue to hit the ball farther and farther, right? And the concern is that if that happens, you remove a ton of skill from the game, right? You don't have to hit these iron shots and even hybrid shots or potentially fairway woods into green, right? It's the kind of the bomb and gouge mentality, right? Where you just driver wedge off every hole. And whether or not that's a realistic concern is certainly debatable. But that's kind of the concern is, hey, we're getting too long. And of course with that, right, if you get into this driver wedge mentality or reality even, then the concern is, well, we have to build these super long golf courses, which are expensive to build and expensive to maintain. And also, and this really is a part of it too, is then some of these classic venues, right? Like St. Andrews and Pebble Beach is one that comes up from time to time too. Like then we can't use these on tour anymore because they're obsolete. And I hear that, I'm like, well, first of all, right, is that real? And also, well, too bad, right? Go play somewhere else if the game has changed.
Well, what are they worried about? Like the British Open and the US Open are really tough conditions. The winner, like I've seen a couple of 1 under or 2 under or 1 over has won the tournaments many years.
That gets to the whole, there are simpler solutions to complex problems more often than not.
Yeah.
But let's back up a little bit and go, look, it's easy to criticize the USGA or anybody in decisions they make, right? I mean, we see it every time we hit publish on anything we do. It's very easy to criticize rather than create, right? But they've got a major problem in their hands because if they solve it the way that they're saying they're going to, it's going to piss everybody off.
Well, be clear, they're not saying anything, right? And that's just it. Like there was a huge concern when this report was kind of eminent that, oh my God, here we go. They're going to recommend that we roll back the golf ball, or, lesser concern, but still on the table, right? Roll back the driver, these sort of things. And that to me was kind of the surprising thing, is that just didn't happen. It was, the conclusion was inconclusive, right? It was like, well,
Right.
there's all these things and we got to continue to look at it. So, I think that's where they're headed.
I found it fairly vague in reading.
Well, I think you said it too. I think that was the responsible decision to make at this juncture, right? If you don't have a good answer, you don't just do what they've done sometimes in the past, right?
Yeah, but I still think to a degree it's kind of a stall tactic. I'm sure there's a little bit more to be learned, and they're certainly asking stakeholders and people who care about the game to provide their input and their thoughts. But ultimately, I don't know how much more data there is to be gathered, right? It's other than another 2 years of numbers ticking up on a chart. I think everybody has a pretty strong grasp of where we are right now and what the trends look like.
I mean, that's the issue, is that they've kind of defined what the question is. They've already defined that there's a problem, right? They've defined that they don't want distances to increase beyond where they are now. And I think even on a closer reading, they've defined that they want to put a little bit of toothpaste back in the tube even, right? Like, they don't even want it moving forward, maybe even preferable to move backward a little bit. So they've defined that as a problem. All the data suggests there's no such same issue in the amateur game. So I feel like the landscape's pretty clear in terms of, if we want to agree that there is a distance issue, where said distance issue is. And I think like people are kind of ready to get into more of a solution mode. Like, okay, well, if that's the issue, what are we going to do next? We don't need to study this.
Let's discuss that, right? From the amateur level, no problem, right? Golfers aren't hitting it farther now than they really were before, right?
Our buddy Lou Stagner, Golf Stats Pro on Twitter there, ran the numbers, and I think, and I'd have to check, and you could probably check his feed to look at the date range, but over the period of time, the pro distance on at the professional level has ticked up 12%. At the amateur level, it's 8%. But there's always some nuance in what numbers you look at. If you just kind of look at the amateur distance graphs, which is what we've referenced, you see a lot of up and down, but not a lot of actual sort of movement. Right? It's not like the Korn Ferry Tour, for example, where that chart just goes up and up and up. It's largely flat.
All right, well, let's address some of the issues and reasons why there might be some issues and things to consider, right? So, not normalized data. So is this data set even worth a shit, really? Swing speeds have increased. That is a fact, right? So we know that golfers are getting stronger, more efficient. So that is going to make the ball go farther. Golfers are getting equipment that is more fit to their swing, which is giving them more ideal, more maximized performance based on their potential. Strength training, which goes back to swing speeds. But then one thing that we were talking about earlier, Tony, which I think is interesting, and I don't think many people would think about. Back in the day when you played golf, let's say 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you get 14 tee shots basically to hit driver, right? And that's the typical number. But I don't ever remember playing many courses that I hit 14 drives back in the day. There were holes where I hit a 3-iron off the tee or a 4-iron, maybe a 3-wood, because there was potential OB that, driver was just too risky. Where nowadays with strokes gained and things, they're saying, look, you pound that thing. You hit driver on everything and take that risk. So let's say out of the 14 shots that they were getting data from back in the day, only 12 or 11 of those was you were hitting driver. And now you're hitting driver 13 or 14 of those. The average in general, just from hitting driver 2 or 3 more times around on those 14 shots, is going to make that go up. Would we agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's if you look at, it's not a chart that I wrote about in my piece today, but if you look and go through the report, one of the charts that they have shows the increase in driver usage off the tee through the years. So that's one of the things they're monitoring, right? Guys are hitting drivers more often, and obviously that's contributing to the distance increase. And that's coming from, again, it's just knowledge, right? You take, I think probably, my favorite example is Scott Fawcett and what he's teaching, and his mindset is send it, right? Like he's You essentially have a grid system for your driver, and if you put your swing on it, you know where it's going to land. And the numbers say that if you want to shoot the lowest score, you're not trying to isolate the right side of the fairway and create a perfect angle into the green. You're just hitting the damn ball as far as you can off the tee and working from there. And that's, more and more tour players are adopting that strategy. And yeah, it's going to lead to more distance and probably lower scores too. That's the projection. So yeah, you can't do anything about that.
So how much of the distance gains are just because people are hitting driver more?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously it's a contributing factor, and I think kind of the nuance. They kind of threw it in there in the report as kind of like we need to have 2 paragraphs on this, but they certainly acknowledged that physicality, more athletic golfers, is contributing to distance, and launch monitor optimization and fitting are contributing to distance. And basically the takeaway is, look, we believe that it's part of every golfer's mindset to get better. We can't limit those things. So if you want to draw a line in the sand from where we are today, say this is where distance stops. We can't be any longer than we are today. The only way to achieve that, if we know that golfers are going to get bigger, faster, and stronger, is to take things like the equipment and say, well, we're going to move this back so that we don't go past this point. So I think, again, that's probably where we're headed, and there's a handful of reasons for it, and the equipment is the easiest. I don't think it's the easiest, but the USGA sees it as the easiest solution moving forward, I believe.
So everyone keeps agreeing that there needs to be a solution or something, but if I can dial it back a little bit, it sounds like Tony, Chris, and Adam, you're agreeing that there is a problem. Harry, I think you say distance isn't a problem. Who cares, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if people want to shoot lower scores, they're going to be shooting lower scores because the mentality is that way inclined too. I think if they want to do better, 9 times out of 10, if you put your mind to it, you're going to do better. And people don't want to see everyone shoot, bogeys after bogeys if you make it incredibly tough. But I think there's a happy medium. I think you can make the course harder. You can make it tighter. You can put some trees in where you see more areas. I mean, using like Arcos, if people are hitting in certain areas, and you can see that in TV and PGA Tour where they predominantly hit their drives, put a little pond or something, just something that will just
force
make
people
them
to not
think
hit
about
driver
it.
all the time.
Yeah, just say, all right, well, I better hit iron down this one just because all this rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, what do you think? I mean, do you think it's a problem?
So at the amateur level, absolutely not, right? I think that there's no suggestion in the data, and we see the average golfer across all ages, handicap ranges, the average number is under 210 yards of total distance. So clearly not a problem there. And my only concern from the professional level would be kind of that tick up on the Corn Ferry Tour where these younger guys are getting so long that it is potentially a problem. But we've talked about this before, the simple solutions, right? Tighten the fairways, slow them down. I mean, we see, when on the PGA Tour, the amount of roll they get on some of these courses where the ball lands and rolls another 30 yards.
Go to a public course, that ain't happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, just grow the grass that much longer. Not only are you going to dial back distance a little bit, you're going to take a little bit of spin off the wedge shots too, and make approaches into greens a little more challenging. So
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and take the USGA's perspective here, and I'll read it word for word, or well, maybe I'll paraphrase. Essentially, it's saying the trend towards longer courses puts golf at odds with growing societal concerns over the use of water, chemicals, and other resources. So they're essentially then bringing climate change and society's perspective into how that's not so much a good thing and how we're contributing or not contributing to it.
They're basically throwing noodles on a wall and hoping some of these will stick so people will take notice. That's all they're doing.
Well, they're not wrong, right?
So does changing the course really affect it that much to the point where we're using astronomical resources that golf is now contributing to climate change?
So you're talking about lengthening courses, which is what they've kind of traditionally done to kind of solve this problem. What we're saying is, no, just grow the grass and tighten the fairways. Like, the USGA, what they talk about in the report is the kind of the run of these super long 70 200 to 7,500 plus yard courses being built, right? And so that's the argument is, look, these courses require a lot of land and they cost a lot of money to build and a lot of money to maintain, and we're running out of water, which is absolutely true. And my response to that is, well, don't build a 7,500 yard course. Like, no amateur golfer, the 99.99% of us who don't play on tour and aren't elite amateurs have no use for a 7,500 course. That is 1,000 yards, give or take, of
so true.
Absolutely wasted real estate. So why are you building these courses?
They're building these courses for the 0.001% and making this 102-page
about the whole golf industry.
About the golf industry, when it's actually not about the golf industry at all, which is 99.9% of us, which is us.
If they do this and they
Except Harry.
If they do this and roll the ball back, right? How are you going to regulate that? Because when it comes to CT driver testing, they're randomizing some drivers out there and say, all right, we're going to randomize 5. All right, your 5 are this week. Let's see that. Are they going to do that for every single golf ball in the pros bags of 150 player field?
I mean, everything is identified by a side stamp, so I think if it gets to that level, that's not going to be an issue policing it. I think guys are going to play the right.
Really?
Golf ball companies have a difficult time making balls that are really consistent right now.
That's the thing. Like if somebody were to try and cheat and slip in a current type ball, like it would be abundantly obvious, right? So that's not a concern.
Well, it depends on how far you roll it back.
Well, but that's the thing, right? If you only roll it back a little, you're not really accomplishing much, right? That's not going to get you. If you roll it back just a touch, you're probably not going to get to the point where these next generation of golfers don't take us beyond where we are right now. So I think
that is a good point. That is a good point what you just brought up, because I was saying, yeah, how are they going to regulate it? But if they are hitting it 50 yards past everyone else, a red flag is going to come up and say, they might have a different ball right there.
It's the same thing with a driver, right? There's nobody that's sneaking in we know some guys have slipped over the limit, but there's nobody that's wildly over the limit.
Yeah, and you know the numbers too, right? When you swing at this speed and you have these numbers on a launch monitor, you know what the maximum that can produce, right? It's like when people go in and get fittings Golf Galaxy and they jack up the elevation to 10,000 feet. I mean, you know something's up, man.
Chris, how about you? Do you think it's a problem?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think, again, it's beating a dead horse a little bit, but at the amateur level, absolutely not. I think what the USGA is really concerned about is you got guys like Brandon Hagee, which, not a lot of people maybe recognize that name, but look back.
I think he made it up.
I did make it up. He's like a 190 ball speed guy, Korn Ferry Tour. He's on PGA Tour this year, and was he the longest out there? Yeah, pretty much on Korn Ferry Tour, but I think they're concerned about everybody becoming like him or a Cam Champ, stuff like that, where that's going to rule the day. And from that perspective, I get where they're coming from. It's hard to argue against them wanting to limit some of the distance and limit what the future of the game looks like a little bit. Now, the issue that I have with that is they've basically talked themselves into a need for bifurcation, which is like the Voldemort of the USGA lingo, right? Like, you can kind of talk about it, it's kind of there, but you're not really allowed to say it.
Well, can you break it down for us? It essentially means making a different set of rules for amateurs and professionals, right?
Yeah, basically to bifurcate something is, fork in the road, right? So we have a different set of rules for pros and for amateurs. And my position is that we already have bifurcation. The game's been bifurcated for quite some time. The rules just haven't caught up to that reality yet. There's no way that, maybe except for Harry, that the rest of us would go out and, play a course in tournament conditions, etc. on a regular basis. The game that we play is not at all similar to what the professional golfers play right now. Their world is entirely different than ours. So
yeah, it's adult softball league versus Major League Baseball.
Exactly. It's beer league Thursday night softball versus a guy throwing 95 miles per hour painting corners, and it's a different world. So I think they need to acknowledge that. I think it's well past due to acknowledge that reality. I think this report did that a little bit by putting in some of the stuff around the posits for local rules to enact some type of equipment situation in order to do that. It's kind of their de facto response to creating bifurcation without saying that that's what they're actually doing. But they've kind of painted themselves into that corner, I think.
Do you think this is going to have repercussions on amateurs getting to a point to turning pro? Because they could get to a point and say, you know what? I have more fun hitting it 340 than hitting it 260 off the tee. And
where do you get paid more?
I find it better to make $0 versus $1 million.
Yeah, but they might not make that $1 million.
You were talking about thinking about going pro, right? If you're thinking about going pro, part of the reason you want to go pro is to continue to get better and better and better, not just hit bombs, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so...
And again, I think other sports experience that same problem too. The difference between college football and professional football. In college, you've only got to get one foot in, and the pros, you got to get two. So you make that, adjustment if that's your dream and your goal.
This is the legitimate challenge that the USGA faces with the bifurcation issue, right? It's if you say, hey, if you draw the line between me and Dustin Johnson, right? That's really easy, right? Dustin Johnson and all the other tour pros can play a tour spec ball, right? And no issues, right? Because they're fundamentally different. I'm never gonna play at the pro level at that high a competitive level, so they can have their ball and I can have mine, and that's kind of your baseball situation, right? The firm line between a wooden bat and an aluminum bat when you go from amateur to professionals. But in golf, you have this middle space, right? You have, to a degree, guys like Harry that are aspiring professionals, or you have these, hardcore, serious, elite level amateurs that want to compete in mid-am events and try and qualify for a U.S. Open and grind their way onto a tour, right? And you have the collegiate game as well, right? So you have a lot of this space that exists between recreational hacker amateurs like me and Chris and
Thank you.
Dustin Johnson and Jason Day and Tiger Woods, right? These elite guys. How do you handle those guys in the middle? And that's even like I've got a lot of opinions on a lot of things, and that's one I've kind of looked at and gone, yeah, that's a tricky little bitch right there.
So you're saying making two sets of rules oversimplifies it?
Well, yeah, because where do you put the guys in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. So that's because, again, and maybe you say, hey, if you're serious enough to compete, you should play the pro ball, but what do you do the rest of the time?
Let me propose something. You keep the same system you have for amateurs that no one really has problems with now, right? The guys like, everybody going out to the local municipal course. Keep the same guidelines for the middle of the pack. And then for the pros, I know that we have oversimplified this, but this is a serious potential solution. And that literally means growing the grass. And that is all that might need to be done here. And I'm not joking around when I say that. And people always go, oh, yeah. It's such a simple solution that people oftentimes just kind of wave it away. But it really solves the majority of this problem. And the great thing about it is kind of like I was telling you, Tony, we used to build these motorcycles when we were kids, right? And you could either go 50 miles an hour or 190 miles an hour, right? And you had these regulators on them, right? And your mom would always come out there and say, hey, you got to dial that thing back, man. And then the kids would get out there and dial it up a little bit. And it's the same with grass. You start dialing a ball back, and where do you keep dialing it back? With grass, you have that ability at any tournament you want, any time you want, and you can bring it in, you can bring it up, and you can change the game, as you've seen with tournaments that can be won with a one over by elite golfers that have to now start shaping shots, hitting less drivers, and that driver distance. Their long drives might be the same, but over the course of a round, the averages will come down.
It's not a hard thing to try. So
great point.
Maybe a couple tournaments on the Korn Ferry Tour, a couple more on the PGA Tour, and maybe they're kind of alternate field events, so you're not kind of mucking up with the mainstream out of the gate. But it like you said, just grow the grass, gather some data, and see what happens.
That's a great pitch to the USGA right there. Like, you can spend 2 years doing what you did, which is some great work in there. There is some good information in this report. Or you can actually start trying some potential solutions on small scale levels, like growing the grass, and seeing what actually happens, because that is a legitimate solution to a somewhat complex problem. Maybe it's not the solution, but try it out, like you said, and see what happens.
It's an easy experiment.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be every week. You could have Harbor Town one week, which is going to just do that on its own, right? Justin Rose won. Was it at Harbor Town he won US? No, that was at
Marion.
Marion, yeah, he was what, 1 over for the week, something like that.
+1 won the U.S. Open.
+1
on a short course.
How long is that course?
under 7.
It's one of the shortest that gets played on tour.
Here's the thing: is I don't think they understand. If the rough is longer, it's going to be harder to get it out. Like if
It's
you go
not
to,
just the rough in the rough. The fairways you grow at eighth
Right,
of an
yeah,
inch longer.
exactly,
Look
but-
at the data from the report.
yeah, but here's the thing: they're going to
5 yards come off distance.
they're gonna say, all right, you're now gonna catch flyers, and now we can't understand on how far
Harry,
it's
you're
gonna
trying
go.
to solve a problem, okay? So in the data, it says on somewhat wet conditions, basically 5 yards get dropped off of driver distance by just having moist conditions.
Yeah, it's 4.4 yards
Yep.
shorter on events where it rained.
So just hear me out here. Hear me out. Grow the grass in the fairways an eighth of an inch longer, not flyer lie, eighth of an inch. Wet the fairways a little bit more, just like they do for some other sports, right? To slow things down. Try that and see what happens.
All right, I get that point. The other thing is how USGA are trying. They're always accommodating to the PGA Tour players to keep them happy. Because when they say, "Oh, these pins are too tight," the greens are too fast, they dial it
Look,
back.
professionals are going to bitch about anything and everything, no matter if you grow the grass or make the course hard or easy. Every week, and with social media now, it's just become more apparent of whiny, bitchy pros complaining about being on the pro circuit, and how the conditions are for the course.
But it's a real thing. They pay attention to that.
I understand that, but they've got a future problem they got to solve rather than in this moment, hey, this guy's bitching about this one flag or this grass over here. They've got a future problem to fix, right?
But that future problem is for the 1%.
You think they're going to not bitch about the ball being drawn back?
Yeah, of course they will.
Okay, so would you rather fix it with you keep playing the ball and the driver you've been playing, and we just grow the grass an eighth of an inch, grow the rough a little bit, narrow the fairway a little bit? I mean, which is an easier solution?
Well, Harry, as probably the most competitive golfer of the bunch, you're not objecting to making or keeping the game competitive, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, but I think everyone else is saying it doesn't require large-scale equipment regulation changes or anything like that. It can be so simple.
I think that's such a complex thing to go to every ball
Right.
company and go, hey, you got to make a special ball. You got to make a special ball. Hey, just don't cut the grass next week.
Huh. That's what I try and do all summer long is not cut my grass.
There is nothing cheaper than just not paying somebody or not doing it yourself.
Right. And I guess here's the other way to think about it too, right? Like, so if the idea is that golf is a game of skill, right? And there's a lot of different skills involved in golf. Hitting the ball a long way is absolutely a skill, right? That's a skill. Long and accurate is absolutely a skill. The USGA feels like that skill has become disproportionately encouraged, promoted, and rewarded in opposition to maybe what we would call, shot making, judging a lie, maybe some of those elements, right? So it's not looking to get rid of something and replace it with something else. It's looking to shift it back into more of a balance. So if you do grow the fairway, so again, what's cheaper than not mowing, right? And you let the fairways grow a little bit and you let the rough grow a little bit. Maybe you introduce a new skill now, which is called judging a lie, right? Players used to have to do that a lot more than they do now, where is it going to fly? Is it not? I need to understand how my ball is going to react to the situation. The penalty now for distance is you got to become a little bit better at judging balls, that are sitting in the rough, and maybe we get it back in balance a little bit.
I think you're going to piss a lot of people off in the process.
Hey, man, it's the long term versus the short term, in my opinion, right? You
They'll get
can't
over it.
worry about the short term for a very good long term solution.
If you're playing for $1.5 million first prize every week, somehow they're going to get over being pissed off pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that or go play in some LPGA events. You want to bitch about some conditions? Go and see what that's
Yeah,
like.
that's for damn sure.
Good point.
Okay, so that came to like a pretty finite point, didn't it? Okay, well, we have some other things that we can talk about this week. Adam, and I know we've seen it online and things like that. We were talking about the new Taylormade Truss before we started recording here, and you were enlightening me that this design, although it looks entirely unique to me, is not unique to Taylormade.
Yeah, so interesting. The buzzword of this year for putters is stability. And you're seeing that with all different kinds of ways of doing it, whether it's even rolled trying to stabilize face impact kind of, or Odyssey with their shaft or the stability shaft that you can buy for any putter, or now with Taylormade Truss. it's all about keeping the putter more stable at impact or throughout the stroke. That being said, the Taylormade Truss is a new putter, a set of putters, right? So they've got a couple blades and a mallet. You've got a TM1, a TB1, and a TB2. The issue that kind of comes up, which, I don't know if golfers are going to really give a damn or not about, is just, it's just really hard for me to get past their quote that says it looks like nothing else when
You're
it
saying
obviously
it does.
looks like, if you've played golf long enough, it looks like a lot of other things,
Well, it looks like nothing else on the market right now.
Well, that's not what the quote said. So Titleist made a putter called the Dead Center. Ashton had a putter came out, and there was other ones as well that tried to solve the same problem. And for the most part, they were looked at as a joke, right? Now TaylorMade comes out with it, and how people kind of found out about this was there was a picture of Tiger Woods practicing with it, which, to be honest with you, the only thing I can think of is they handed him this putter, and somebody obviously had to quickly grab a snapshot of him using it because, I can't imagine what he was actually saying when he was trying this putter because he's a Scotty Cameron guy, so the truss had to look odd to him. But, I think its whole purpose is to reduce side spin at impact, basically. And, there's some data out there to say that it might be doing that. So great. I'm all for products that are here to help golfers shoot lower scores. I will say this, looking at it, and Harry can give his opinion too, but it looks odd until you stand over it, and then most of that oddness goes away. But the feeling is weird. A good putter design too doesn't shut down at address if you kind of let your hands go. This one shuts down pretty bad. And I just think golfers are willing to look at one thing that's a little odd. I think this has 2 or 3 or 10 things that are going on that are a little odd. So it's going to be a tough sell, I think. But, if it's here, if it helps golfers get the ball in the hole faster, I'm all for it.
Tony, do you think it might have potential? Because TaylorMade has actually won multiple most wanted putter categories, so they know what they're doing when it comes to putters.
Yeah, it's you don't know until you really get through a test. It's super hard to predict with a putter what's going to work, and I think it's one of those things, right? It's a low cost item to produce, and you can make something that's different. You can put a story behind it and potentially generate some interest that way, right? There's an appeal to putters that are aesthetically beautiful, and then in some cases there are putters that are so ugly guys want to pick them up. And so this could be a case of, hey, yeah, this looks so ugly, I got to try it, right? And then as Adam said, when you put it down at address, it doesn't look too strange. And if it works, yeah, you get past all of it. But I don't know. I don't think it's a world changer by any stretch.
Harry, what if some of the testers said about it so far? Adam saying it looks weird, it feels weird, it's got a couple of things that might be a downfall for it. Have the testers picked up on that yet?
Yeah, the comment every time is as ugly as, yeah.
Okay.
And then they can't get past that though. They can't get past the looks because subconsciously they're already thinking, oh, this looks so terrible when I look at it. And I see it with the driver test too, with the TaylorMade sole plate. They look at it from the bottom and say, oh, it's so disgusting. And then they're already putting bad mojo on their shot. So if it doesn't look good to the consumer, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to buy it because they don't relate that to performance.
It's catch-22, like Tony said, right? They're more likely to at least pick it up, right? Because it looks different.
Yeah.
But with putters, it's really interesting. Golfers traditionally, when it comes to the putter category, they're open to putting new putters in the bag more than most products, right? Because, just Chucky was in there the other day, hey, man, the magic's worn off this thing.
Yeah.
So they're trying all kinds of putters, and it's a low, cost generally, like Tony said. But golfers don't want to play gimmicky putters. And I think that's because they don't want to be looked at as, when they pull that cover off and their buddies see them and they go, what in the hell are you playing with? They don't want to be looked at as a non-serious golfer, right?
But if they make more putts of them, they can just say, well,
yes, true. And the other side of this is it has a TaylorMade name on it, right? If this had some wacky brand, no one would have picked it up. But TaylorMade gave some seriousness to a odd design,
Chris, what are your thoughts?
My question / thought is the Truss going to be around in a year, or 2 years from now, because because that's a risk they take internally when you design a product and put it out there. I don't know that TaylorMade knew that the Spider design that they had would catch on the way that it did. Some of that is good timing, some of it's Jason Day lighting the world on fire with that, maybe some of it's the red color, whatever the case is. I would love to know inside TaylorMade, well, if they're looking at it going, it's a 2020 thing, we'll see, kind of, no real plans to extend it, or is it like, hey, we'll just give it a run and see what happens with this thing? My gut is, if you like it, get one this year. I'm not convinced there's going to be a lot in 2021, 2022.
It's an interesting point, Chris, because what's interesting about TaylorMade? They're known for drivers, right? But the weird thing about it is when you look at the wedges and putter section, they just never stick to a single evolutionary design, right? So every year they're trying something new, and you can never kind of know, like, what is it? Who is TaylorMade when it comes to putters? Who is TaylorMade when it comes to wedges, right?
They are ADHD of putters and wedge design.
They really are.
Well, I think on the putters, they've had some designs that have stuck, right? Like, so now Spider has not only built a legacy within the TaylorMade lineup, but it's become one of those ubiquitous shapes where everybody has their version of the Spider. And certainly, the Juno has done well, and they have those classic shapes. So I think it's reasonable, and you see just about everybody who makes a putter every now and then kind of steps outside the wheelhouse and tries something kind of strange. So I would actually disagree. And I don't think TaylorMade has been overly schizophrenic with their putters. With the wedges, I might agree with you. But on the putters, I think they have a stable of shapes that, they're not Scotty Cameron in terms of sales, but they work and they sell reasonably well. But I think they're willing to take a risk.
I think you made some good points, Tony. But when I think of like TaylorMade putters versus other companies and say, that brand putters, there are things that pop to mind. Yes, the Spider pops to mind for TaylorMade. Other than that, you say the Juno, but for as good as that putter performs, no one ever talks about the Juno. So
well, and again, it's one of those kind of ping shapes, so to speak, right? Whereas the Spider is
no one more schizophrenic than Ping when it comes to putters.
Well, it's kind of ironic, right? But But the Spider has kind of been like, this is the distinctively TaylorMade shape, right. And they have the classics in the lineup, and throw a noodle every now and again. And I wouldn't bet any sort of sum of money that the Truss is going to be the next big thing, and we'll see.
Maybe a better way to put it is, I just feel like we should be, when you think of TaylorMade, we should think of things when we think about putters and wedges, but we don't, because they're so good at making drivers.
Spider. I mean,
well, that's it.
Yeah,
Spider. That's it. Yeah.
I think that's part of the issue, too, is like most of those iconic products or whatever, you think of a name or a model, right? So you say, Titleist wedges. Nobody calls them Titleist wedges. They're Vokeys, right? And you say, okay, TaylorMade putters, most people would probably say Spider. Like when I think something identifiable with TaylorMade, I go, oh, it's Kia. Like that's when I
used to. I used to. I don't. Yeah.
But that's part of the fracturing thing for me, is I don't necessarily just associate one thing with them anymore. But it could just be me and my lack of ability to pay attention for that long.
What do you guys associate with Union Green?
A cult. There it is, right? The new on the scene direct-to-consumer golf ball brand that just launched by the time people hear this. Today, I guess, right? If we get this published on time. Today, brand new Union Green golf ball brand. Yeah, there you go.
What's Union Green? I mean, what do you associate with that?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. So Union Green is a upstart direct-to-consumer golf ball brand that falls under the Acushnet umbrella. And if you've never heard of Acushnet or don't know what that means, it's basically the parent company for Titleist. So Union Green it's not Titleist and it's not Pinnacle officially, but it falls under the same parent company.
It's Titleist.
And the golf balls that are being offered are made at Titleist Ball Plant number 2, which is where things like Torsoft and Velocity get made.
So how is it not Titleist?
It's being made by Titleist.
It's being made in a Titleist factory.
Oh, but so they've got like this separate little cubicle that's called Union Green.
Yeah, I haven't taken the tour since Union Green launched 15 minutes ago. But
let's just get that out there. So for everybody, yes. Like when we heard about this a while ago, it was like Tony and I sat back and went, "Holy shit!" Like,
yeah, we've been sitting on this since Left Dash launched, so that's how long it's been. Crazy.
yeah. So Titleist / Acushnet is coming out with a direct-to-consumer golf ball brand. So what does that mean? That's direct-to-consumer is the Snells, the Vices, some of the other ones, right? So let me ask you, Chris, why do you think Titleist Acushnet is coming out with Union Green?
I'm sorry, who makes the ball? Who's it? I just
Not them.
hit.
Not them.
That's I think it's indicative of Acushnet, maybe not Titleist, trying to do, like you said, Tony, sometimes every once in a while these companies go outside of their wheelhouse, and that can be for any different number of reasons. Maybe it's to garner attention from, the beer night, Wednesday night 9-hole league guys that walk into the pro shop and go, oh shit, I need some golf balls. They happen to be right here, and because they're sold under that same label, my hunch is that a lot of the reps, when they're pre-selling, whether it's Left Dash or the standard Pro V1, Pro V1X, they're going to package some of this Union Jack stuff, whatever, in there with them, and it's going to have its way.
That's beef jerky, ain't it?
Is that King made jerky? Union Jack? What is that
I don't
stuff?
know.
It's a great country.
They're going to have Union Green or one hair, whatever, and because Titleist does have such a large green grass presence, I think that's the entree into a lot of those green grass accounts for this, so it'll be there.
Well, that's an important distinction. So Union Green is going to have very, very little distribution in whether you want to call it green grass or brick and mortar. Like it is going to be not exclusively, but primarily direct to consumer. It's going to be 60 to 80 retail accounts. That's it. So, when you consider the thousands, it's going to be, it's very unlikely you're going to be walk into your golf shop and find Union Green. And that's because there really is the idea of trying to build a culture and a lifestyle around this brand that is distinctly different than Titleist, right? It's not Titleist, it's different from Titleist. There's a different vibe with the brand. It's for a different type of golfer. And in fact, when in discussing this, it's really the target audience is a guy who plays golf but doesn't necessarily consider himself a golfer. So
I was going to say, like, why has Titleist done this? Is it because, I've got two questions. Why have they done this? And what type of balls is it? 2-piece, 3-piece, 4-piece?
Great question.
12-piece?
So Tony's going to give you his reason based on what Titleist, Acushnet has told him the reasons they're doing this is, and I'm going to tell you why I think they do it. Titleist is one of the smartest and most well-managed golf companies since I've been in golf. Okay, 20 years of watching this. They've always had a steady incline. They're not looking for the big spikes up and downs like the Taylormades and Callaways over the last 20 years, right? They are well managed, and they are not dumb. And when they make a decision, you might question it from afar.
But process has gone into it.
They've put a lot of thought into it, right? This is my assumption. This doesn't mean it's true. But let's go back to a story that I heard about True Linkswear, okay? True Linkswear started to make a shoe that at the PGA show had to be one of the most insane boosts I have ever seen in my entire career. It was there was
it looked like a
boxes.
Payless exploded.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was shoe padding everywhere. There was the lining that goes in the boxes everywhere. People were stealing them off the racks. It was insane. Okay, this was the first year of True Linkswear. And I'll never forget, I talked to people within Titleist, FootJoy, and granted those are two separate companies, but together to some degree. And they said, we'll wait for them. Look, they wait for people to take the risks, right? And then when they've put out there and taken all the risk, and the cream of the crop of those risk takers rise to the top, they go, all right, now it's time for us to jump in, right? So direct to consumer, let's just get a couple truths out there. Let's take Snell and Vice, right? Snell, in my opinion, is a better performing ball than Vice. And I know for a fact it's a bad logo from most people's opinion. And they will come into our facility and go, what's this? It's a great ball. What's that one? That looks cool.
It's a golf ball. It's an okay
And
ball.
I go, that ball is better than that ball probably. And they go, I don't give a damn. I'm playing that one. It just looks cool, right? So Union Green, in my opinion, is going, hey, there's all these direct-to-consumer golf balls ever since this Kirkland thing and Snell thing and Vice thing, and they're starting to maybe not take market share, but they're creating a little niche over here.
So do you think that they're going to have a logo saying Union Green, made by Titleist?
No. But if Tony's right, and this is a lifestyle play, and this is for non-golfing golfers, that logo better look good.
It better look good.
That's a serious buying consideration when it comes to the lifestyle golfer. And, it's a 2-piece, 3-piece ball. This isn't a Pro V, Pro V1X. This is a value ball, ionomer, cover for the 3-piece. This isn't a great performing golf ball,
So you're not saying that they're going to be stepping on their own toes in any way because they're that different.
Well, that's the other thing, right?
That's always the challenge. That's always the challenge.
So Titleist isn't dumb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going and waiting. They waited until this market defined itself a little, and they said, I'm going to go in and grab that away because we're the kings. Because remember, Titleist is number one by like miles in the golf ball section, and that's where they make their bread, is in golf balls, okay? So they are protecting their house right now. And like I told you earlier, if somebody comes and tries to attack your children, you're going after them, right? Your kids. This is their kids. And some people are starting to come in and, pick on their kids and call them, short or something like that. And they're going, no, you're not going to pick on my kids. I'm coming after you, right? So that's my opinion, what they're doing. And they can put whatever spin they want on it, that this isn't Titleist, this is this, the other. These are Titleist decisions being made.
The money all goes to the same place at the end of the day, right? It's
correct. So they can spin it however they want. And they want to keep some separation, right? Because if this looks like Titleist too much, people are going to go, what the hell? But if it looks like a little bit of Titleist, they go, well, I trust those people. They make good balls. They probably make a good ball over here, too.
That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Well, the thing you have to keep in mind, right, if outside of our world, right, where everybody's hardcore and knows who's behind every brand, but if you walked out onto certainly my home course, and I would guess most any golf course around here, and ask somebody who makes Pinnacle, right, the answer is going to be, well, doesn't Pinnacle make Pinnacle, right? There's
Harry's over there going, wait a second, doesn't Pinnacle make Pinnacles?
so right.
Who makes Pinnacles, Harry?
It makes precepts.
It's like we know that Pinnacle is next to Titleist under that Acushnet umbrella, but the average golfer doesn't know that. And when you talk about the target audience for Union Green, which is again a guy who plays golf but doesn't consider himself a golfer, is just going out to have fun. Sometimes he plays by the rules, sometimes he doesn't. He's it's just one of any number of activities he engages in that is largely just an excuse to hang out with his buddies, have a good time, and probably throw back a few beers. So that guy is. Titleist isn't keeping this a secret, or Acushnet isn't keeping this a secret that they're making this ball. But for the guy who's most likely to buy it, he's not going to know, he's not going to care. So it's going to be that complete and total separation in that respect. So in terms of what I see as the challenge, like keeping it separate from Titleist is not a challenge. It's turning it into an authentic brand, right? Building a culture around it that people see is like, we see it with Vice all the time, right? They're for no reason that we can particularly identify, other than the marketing seems to be pretty good. People identify with that brand. They think that brand is cool, right? Vice is cool. I don't know why. I like the logo. We've talked about that. And so it's essentially the same type of thing they're trying to right. Well, don't get me started there, but it's the same type of vibe they're trying to create with Union Green, where I think this is a cool product, not necessarily like this is the best performing ball on the market, because the guy who's going to be buying this, if they hit their audience, isn't somebody who's obsessing over launch and spin, right? He just wants something that he thinks is cool and performs well enough for him. And being made at a Titleist factory under the Acushnet umbrella, is at least going to be a quality product within that space. So that's kind of the thing, is a lifestyle and a culture.
Yeah. All right, so Tony, let's flesh this out a little bit, right? Let's say they succeed with this, which I think they will, and like you say, the average non-golfing golfer doesn't even know who makes what ball, right? So you're right there. So now let's say they start to get some movement with this, and they want to make a good ball, right? Like a real good ball.
A tour ball, a urethane ball. That's what we're talking about, right?
What do they do then?
That becomes a challenge for sure, because, right, and if... you could argue, so there's two balls. So there's the T-Bird, which is a $20 distance-centric ball, right? And maybe that steps on Velocity's toes a little bit. but ultimately, who cares? And at
Money's going
27,
to the same place.
right, the 27.99 ball, the pin drop, that's more balanced performance. So distance with some greenside spin. That's a 3-piece ball. That one maybe starts to creep up on Tour Soft a little bit, but there's really doesn't align perfectly with anything in the current Titleist lineup.
But do you ever think they make a ball that creeps up on that Pro V?
So that's what I'm getting at. So there's not a ton of competition with their own brand. I think if Union Green comes out with a 3-piece urethane ball, it's a little tricky. But again, if the guy, like, it's a delicate balancing act, right? If you're Titleist, I guess maybe there's a risk that the guy who buys a Pro V1 knows that this cheaper urethane Union Green ball exists. So that's something you don't want to take a Pro V1 guy and even if you're selling him a ball that's under your umbrella, you don't want to be selling him a cheaper ball. Going the other way, hey, the Union Green guy who wants a little bit more greenside spin, maybe, yeah, you could offer it for him, but I don't know how you do that without risking the Pro V1X franchise, but I'm not a marketing genius, so maybe there's a way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's a really smart play. Titleist very rarely will jump in a category minus the triangle driver that is not here to stay, right? So, like, I think DTC has carved out its space, right? Snell being kind of the guy with the pedigree that has some actual ball experience. The Kirkland ball, which dropped the domino, then shit a domino after that, probably right back up. And then you've got the Vices of the world. These companies are selling a lot of golf balls, and it shows the evolution of the market and also the smarts of Titleist to come in and do what they're doing with Union Green, I think.
There's one proposition that Union Green offers that nobody else in the direct-to-consumer space offer, and very few in the ball space in general.
What's that?
Offer, and that's these balls are 100% made in the USA, and that is important to somebody. So if you are comfortable going the direct-to-consumer route, and we know a lot of guys are, but you still want to buy something that is made in America, this is your only option in that space.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, the kind of counterpunch part is, I think you'll see some of the DTC brands, if they're smart, they'll use this kind of, like you were saying, Adam, as validation, right? Because Titleist didn't jump in and do concept series stuff until PXG had kind of proven that space, right? And now they're on the second generation of that. Titleist tends to follow a little bit more closely with that. So by jumping into the space, if I'm Snell or Vice or anybody else saying, hey, this is valid, not that it needs further validation, but Acushnet/Titleist just gave them all the validation they need, and I'd be interested to see how they would spin that in terms of that validates what we've been telling you for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Great question, and a question right back to you. How do you think Union Green by Acushnet/Titleist,
not Titleist,
direct to consumer golf? Chris, how do you think the Union Green golf ball is going to affect the direct to consumer brands Vice and Snell?
If those brands are intelligent about it, it should do nothing but help them, because it validates not just the concept of DTC, but it validates the market presence of that. Now, somebody can argue, certainly there's only, the pie is a certain size, and if Acushnet jumps in and starts taking a meaningful slice of that, now we're all going to have a little bit less pie to eat.
Who is more at risk, Snell or Vice, in this scenario, in your opinion?
Vice, in my opinion.
I'd say initially my gut is Vice because of the performance aspect of it, because there's that component to it. Snell, okay, I guess let me explain it this way. What Snell needs to do in order to blow that piece apart is cosmetic. It's not material, it's not quality. What Vice needs to do is something I don't know that they're able or willing to do, which is material and performance, right? So it's an easier change for Snell to adapt moving forward than Vice, would be my opinion.
Yeah, the simple sort of question in response to your question is, which of the two brands you mentioned is more driven by the lifestyle aspect of it, right? There's nobody, I would presume, right, who's playing Snell because they love the logo and think there's a cool vibe that comes with it, right? That's a ball you choose because it offers really, really good performance at an exceptional price.
And Dean writes you a thank you card, and that people love that.
Yeah, so I think there's, I think maybe like the get some ball is at risk because again, neither of these balls are competing directly with an MTB or even a Vice Pro. So, if I'm like a cut golf, for example, or a seed or kind of these smaller upstarts that are all, taking fractions.
It's all the same bloody ball though.
Well, it's,
from what we found, it's all the same ball, just a different logo.
There's a lot of them, yeah. But I mean, that's kind of who you can go after, and you can get fractions of percent from those guys. You can steal a little bit from Vice. You can maybe steal a little bit from Snell, and then potentially carve out. And this is what they really hope to do, right? Yeah, you want to steal a little bit from your competitors, but you want to kind of carve out your own identity in this space and attract guys to your brand that maybe haven't really taken any interest in anything in particular. So if you kind of look at, what these guys are playing now, these target audience, what they're saying is, look, these guys that not only are they not loyal to any one brand, there's not even any, they don't even lean one way or the other. They don't really care what the brand is. And in fact, the ball that they're most likely to play is the true number one ball in golf is, there you go. What right. I find, the true number one ball in golf. The number one ball
in golf is the one you find in the woods.
Exactly. I go golf behind it. I love that.
So if you can take the guy who plays what he finds and go, you know what, for $20, I think this brand is pretty cool. So I'm just going to go out and buy these instead of, relying on foraging in the wilderness.
When we heard about the story originally, we've been in golf long enough to just not everything really piques your interest anymore. This one's going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And even like whether you kind of hate the idea or you go, look, and Titleist is not, Acushnet, right? There's no secret. They're not going, no, we're not. We're just doing this because to do it. There's a business opportunity here, right?
These aren't the white coats of Titleist. These are the blue jeans of Titleist.
Well, and it is. So that's one of the things I asked. I'm like, given your reputation, right, and where Titleist is in the industry, how can you successfully create a brand that's authentic where the vibe has to be much more flat brim than it is white sport coat, right? And so part of the answer is, look, it's not the old guard at Titleist that's running this project, right? It's the younger guys. It's a sort of guys that are newer to Titleist. It's guys that aren't part of that corner, that traditional Titleist culture, or haven't been a part of it that long. So it's a different group of people than you would have sort of backing a Pro V1 or something like that. Not that this is a Titleist product.
I wonder if they'll throw these into accounts and use them as range balls.
My question is haven't they already tried a new ball under a different name? Like they had an Acushnet ball.
Long time ago.
Right. And how did that work?
Well different times, man.
Yeah,
I know the different times, but
you've got to the line. The history begins at the Pro V1, really. Yeah. So anything that happened before that.
Here's something interesting I don't think most people know about Titleist, though. Not only do they have the number one ball that you buy when you go to the store, they have the number one ball that you buy when you reload from a refinishing standpoint, like non-new balls. You know what I mean? Like used golf balls, right?
Refurbished,
and I don't think many people know that. So, and now they have direct to consumer. So now not only do they own you when you go to the store, they own you when you reload up on the refurbished ones and when you go online and buy direct consumer.
Well, it's kind of it's part of the evolution of the business, right? Because there was a point in time not so long ago where, in my opinion anyway, the mindset of the company was very much, we're Titleist and we don't do that, period.
Let me cap that off. So when I first got in the golf business 20 years ago, okay, the first person I called was Wally Uline, okay? And I called him and told him I was going to start the first internet business.
Okay, who's that?
And he said, mark this down, write it down, whatever you got to say. We will never, ever sell on the internet. And how are you going to get the money through the computer screen? That was Wally Uline.
Right.
The files are in the computer.
That's right, so that's just it. I mean, it's a different time. And so this kind of evolving version of Titleist, what I like to say is, look, they're still very rigid in their core principles, and it's things like, look, quality matters, and we're not going to cut corners to make an extra buck here or there. but it's certainly more open to selling golf balls online, selling on Amazon, right? This Union Green project. And the way I see it is like, look, we are going to be true to who we are as a brand, true to our core principles, but we're also not going to just leave money on the table, which is why, like, hey, yeah, if you ask Titleist, for example, you say, hey, what golf ball should most people play, or everybody, and they're going to tell you, look, just about everybody, 99.99 probably % of golfers would benefit from a multi-piece 3-4 piece ball with a urethane cover, right? But they're going to offer you something else because they know people are going to buy that. And if you ask them, hey, should I play a refurbished golf ball? No, you shouldn't. But we know that some people are going to buy refurbished golf balls. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the refurbishing business, and we're going to make the best refurbished golf ball that we possibly can. We're not going to leave that money on the table. And so along those same lines, right? Hey, you've got a multitude of brands springing up that are selling balls exclusively online, right? The direct to consumer guys. And so you can say, well, I'm not going to be a part of that. Or you can say, you know what? There's money in that. And we think you should probably play a Titleist golf ball, but if you're not going to, let me offer you a Union Green product, which is definitely not Titleist or Pinnacle.
Do you think they've kind of bit themselves in the ass? No, for instance, hear me out. So they've bit themselves in the ass. Do you think they've sold their cause off to other companies that make golf balls, and then they're making these balls? So you don't think that's the thing?
No, absolutely not. And that's one more thing that's worth pointing out about the Union Green products. These are balls that do not exist anywhere else. These aren't like we just took a Titleist ball and put a different logo on it. These were developed for this project. The dimple pattern is unique. The cores are unique. So an entirely different ball, part of a different family, a different product line, right? So yeah, no, Titleist isn't selling their stuff to anybody else. Titleist owns their line beginning to end, and I presume they will always try and keep. So
why have they sued loads of companies? Is it the dimple patterns? Like why?
Well, I said, no, I mean that's just if your main breadwinner is golf balls, you protect your house.
Yeah, it's dimple patterns, and it's you can look at it as Titleist Acushnet being overly litigious, or the phrase they like to use is, by aggressively pursuing and protecting patents, they are guaranteed freedom to operate. And
correct. So let's say let's say you spent your whole life creating an idea, concept, like the umbrella with the gutter on it. Your whole life.
There you go.
Right?
That is.
And you spent $100,000, which plenty of people do at the PGA show, creating products like a umbrella with a gutter around it. And
elevator.
somebody the next year stole your idea, right? Like you invested all that time and energy and money, right, and resources. You're going to protect that, right? And if you don't, why did you put all that effort and energy and resources into it?
Yeah, and it's sort of like, and just because you're a big ass company with a lot of money and a lot of resources, doesn't mean that somebody should be able to steal from you and borrow your idea.
Yeah, you see that driver over there with the tubes in it? Yeah, we'll talk about that on another day.
Well, it's also to send a message, right? It's also to send a message and to let people, I think, know. I mean, when a guy comes over to my house to pick up one of my daughters for a date, do I have to hire the guy to sit on my porch with a couple shotguns and an empty 24-pack of Natty Ice? No, I don't have to. But maybe I just want to send a message just in case anybody else happens to be looking like, oh, yeah, you don't jack with that guy, right? And I think that's part of what they're doing. They, protect your house.
That's the best analogy ever.
That's surprising. I figured you'd be more like, take her. I got 6 others.
that after the first one, that's what I've gotten to. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for people that are listening that don't know this, Chris Nickel has 7 daughters.
I thought he was joking when he told me that.
I thought he was a Mormon, right, when he told me. I was like, gotta be.
Right. I was like, because I had just met him, and within like 5 minutes, he's like, Miranda, I have 7 daughters. And I was like, no, you don't. And so I played it off like I believed him, and then later I was like, oh crap, he has 7 kids.
Yeah, he really does.
Girls, 7 girls.
Don Cheadle knows.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've exhausted this week's episode. My mind's mush.
All right, one last thing before we end this episode of No Putts Given, and that is something that I don't know if everybody knows this because we've got some new listeners and things like that, but No Putts Given is powered by MyGolfSpy. MyGolfSpy is the main website that we operate on MyGolfSpy. A lot of Fridays out of the year, about half of them, we have what we call member testing. That is an opportunity. We get a lot of emails from you guys and girls saying, hey, how can I be a part of the testing process? There's two ways. One, you can either be local to us in Yorktown and be a part of our most wanted testing, or two, the best way for the majority is to just become a member of the forum. And what that is every Friday almost, we have an opportunity for you guys and girls to test new product like drivers and irons and wedges and rangefinders. And this week, what do we got, Tony?
Fujikura Motori X Series shafts, so F1 or F3. Sign up, decide which one is right for you, and what just fell? I don't much care, but yeah. Chris, what's the actual process for this one?
Yeah, so process super easy. Just follow the steps that are in the article. Basically, you got to be a registered member of our forum, become active in our forums. That always helps. We're always looking for different demographics for people to test different products, and there's a selection process. Once we do that, in this particular case, you'll go through a phone fitting with probably Marshall out at Fujikura and go through and get fit for a specific shaft. Then we got some before-after questions and kind of just go from there.
There you go.
Yeah, and how that works is pretty crazy, right? Not only do you get to test this, you get to keep it. All these items every other Friday or every Friday, you get to keep. They're yours to keep after you test them. So whether it's a driver, a new set of irons, or a $300 shaft from Fujikura, they're yours to keep.
Yeah, it's a good shaft. I've hit it.
Yeah, we hit it yesterday.
We hit it yesterday, and it was.
Or no, 2 days ago.
Yeah, it was a very, very good shaft.
Yeah.
So pretty cool opportunity there to be part of the process.
I think so. I mean, we try to involve the reader as much as possible, and forum member testing there's some really good product every week.
Must be getting close to dinner time. Hi, buddy.
I was going to say, we can wrap it up here. It's been a nice full house today. Good discussion, so lots of points to think about as we wrap it up. But guys, thanks so much.
Today was a good show.
It was.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.